Well, hello there, and welcome to Chronicles of Power, a podcast dedicated to the world of power where I review and break down the latest episode in the Powerverse. Today, we will be talking about episode 208 from Power Book 4 Force, written by the wonderful Melody Cooper and directed by Eve Rivera. I always wonder if I'm saying his name right. Is
That's
it
right.
Eve or is it? It
No,
is.
it's
It
what?
is right. We are brought to you by Private Listen, your source for all things music, sports, culture, and entertainment. Follow the new page at Chronicles of Power on Instagram. You can find us on YouTube at PVTLSTD. You can find all types of interviews, tidbits, and music features on the YouTube page. So definitely get over there and go follow us. My name is Keemie, and I'll be your guide as we break down the drug dealing adventures of power. And today, without further ado, we have our first female guest at Chronicles of Power. It is the writer from episode 208. Her name is Melody Cooper. Please, all of the balloons are falling down there. Please, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, in episode 208, we have a lot of things going on, and we'll get into all of the particulars of that. We'll talk about the big scenes, some of my favorite scenes, and one of my favorite lines, out of chaos comes opportunity. And I feel like Tommy works better in chaos. But before we start talking about Force, and before we start talking specifically about episode 208, I do have some questions about you, Miss Melody, because I am... One of the things that I like about Power is their inclusion of a lot of female voices and a lot of female voices of color. And we have men of color too, right? Mm-hmm. But it made my heart melt when I saw you and I saw, well, her name on Instagram is Magic Cole, but I believe her real name is Nikki. She was the writer from episode 3. And I was like, and I was like, like I didn't know she was on the writing team, but when once I was doing my research and I found out, I was like, oh my goodness. So, I was very, very happy. And I was super happy once I found you, and then obviously you agreed to come on. So thank you. And if you don't mind, if you can tell us how you got your start in writing.
Oh, wow. That's, well, I started out as in New York. I'm from New York originally. And I started out as an actor. And I was writing plays. There just were not enough really strong roles for Black women, I thought. So I wrote a play that was about this woman, Lucy Parsons, who started the early labor movement, or was involved in the early labor movement in Chicago, as it happens. In fact, Joe Sikora put my play over to a theater in Chicago who wants to do the play. So that's like a connection to Force. But
shout out to Tommy.
Yes, he's a theater background. He has a range, and I love that about him. And I have another story about him in a screenplay. But I was in this play, and then it was done in New York. It was produced in Miami with another actress, and I said, wait, I don't have to be in it. I can. So I started really leaning into writing. And I was writing plays, and I wrote a play about Rwanda. I went to Rwanda to research it, which was intense. And New York Stage and Film did a workshop of it. And this film director came, and all these film people were there. And so they kind of took me under their wing and told me, your writing is very visual. You should be writing features. So I started doing that. And what really got me into television was... I was in I have a screenplay called Northern Cross that's about a Black woman soldier who helps a Mexican woman who is being chased by rogue police at the border. And and so that won the Grand Jury Prize at Urban World Film Festival in New York.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And I was like, yes, this is going to change my life. And I was like, tickets? Nope. It's like nothing. And there's a whole thing on my desk, and I was like, no. And then I write horror and sci-fi as well, as you might be able to tell from the ending of episode 208.
Yeah.
And I wrote a horror pilot and I submitted it to the HBO writing program and got in. And that was what really changed everything, because that was it was 9 months of really rigorous, like making us, teaching us about how to write for TV. And one of my mentors was Craig Mazin, who wrote Last of Us, and he's a great guy. It was really great working with everybody in that program. Kelly Edwards was running it at the time, who's now writing herself. And while I was in the program, I got staffed on my first TV show, which was 2-sentence horror stories on CW. And I wrote 2 episodes. One of them was a beige about how hospitals and how the whole medical community treats, or I should say, mistreats Black women. So it was great to be able to all my writing is based around kind of social issues, but without I call it Trojan horsing it, without beating you over the head about it, but just really addressing it, especially for our community. So, and then I got onto, and I should tell this part of the story. This is a long answer. George Floyd happened, but the day before that, my brother sent me a video of him being this woman choking out her dog and telling him while he was in Central Park bird watching that she was going to call the police on him, and then she started to. So Christian Cooper, who's at Central Park Birders,
my God, Christian Cooper is your brother?
My brother. And
what?
So I had been.
Wait, why did you tell me that before so I could get my poker face?
I just wanted to see your reaction. Yes.
All the Coopers. Melody could have been related to.
Right.
Christian
Exactly. So that was, and I'm an activist, and I had been on Twitter. I was on Twitter at the time. I'm not anymore, but I was on Twitter, going off on Karens left and right, and just, posting when I saw that other people had issues. And then my brother sends me this. I said, oh, hell no, is this woman going to do my brother like this? And I was really terrified because I really got upset because I thought, if the police had come and he had left to go on bird watch, they could have killed him. So I was really upset, and I posted it, and it got like 50 million hits from around the world. And it changed things for him, for sure. And for me, because we both were able to speak about systemic racism. We went on The View. We were on, Christiane Amanpour from CNN interviewed us. I mean, it was just this whole thing. I wrote an editorial for New York Times. All of that was, for me, it was about speaking truth to this issue that needed to be dealt with. And from that, Color of Change reached out and said, we'd like for you to maybe be, we need Black writers on cop shows. And I was like, you talking to the wrong person, because I had just written an article asking, saying we should defund the police. And that had gone viral. And I said, you really probably don't want me on a cop show. And they're like, no, really, we do. Because they had read my play about Rwanda and had a general meeting, maybe 6 months before with this SVP. And they liked me. And they said they wanted to work with me. They had to find the right thing. So they put me with Warren Leight, was the showrunner for Law and Order SVU at the time. And he was a playwright like me. And I had a great meeting with him, and I did my due diligence, asked around, and people are like, you should work with him. You'd learn a lot. So Color of Change was like, please, there's no Black writers in cop. There's like 1 or 2. And this is the way to help change the narrative. So I said, all right, I like the showrunner. I like the makeup of the room. I was the only Black writer in the room. There's a Black assistant, but I was the only Black writer. I said, let's do it. And I pitched an episode about missing Black women, figuring in 22 seasons, the longest running show in U.S. history, they would have done 2 or 3 or 4. And they're like, no, we've never done one. And I was like, no, really? So that's what my episode was about. And I enjoyed working in the season. I was invited back. But I made a decision to pursue. There were other projects that I was working on. One of them was a film for Netflix to adapt an African fantasy book to a feature. And the other I was working with Will Packer, and we sold a show to Netflix, a genre show. So,
you working.
well, for all that, we have, with the strike and with executives, this is a thing that I'm learning now, because I've been at it for 3 years. And the thing I'm learning is that, one, everything takes a while, and even when it happens fast, it can go away. Because if your executive leaves, you're the studio or the streamer, it's almost like you have to start from scratch. So you really just have to, my thing is pay me. Pay me, first of all. If I'm going to do that work, and I have gotten paid, and that is, we can't work for free. We shouldn't work for free. And so that's been good. And I have amazing representatives. I have I have 3 Black agents at CAA who are amazing. And then I have a further team, like 5 people who always have my back. And my manager, Corey, at the Cartel is wonderful and is always in touch with me. All through the strike was in touch with me. It was such, because a lot of, it was a hard time. It was 5 months.
So what do you feel like it was pretty isolating going through the strike?
No, because it was less isolating, because I usually juggle like 10 projects. Like I'm developing a horror series with Sterling K. Brown and Terrell McCraney. I'm always working on something. I write a comic book, but it got me out to talk to other writers and showrunners and to get to know other people. It was really, and I love protesting. I've been doing it since I was in a stroller.
Right up your alley.
I was always out there. And I'm a New Yorker, okay? So when we protest, we don't do it neatly and quietly. We stop traffic. We go out on the highway. We're loud. And so I was not prepared for the more, the way,
more subdued.
Yeah, more subdued. But I was at NBC, where they were blocking up the sidewalk. They were cutting the trees to remove the shade. And I was there the day that we took to the streets and the cops came out. So I felt at home during that day because that's the kind of thing.
Cut trees?
Oh yeah, cut the trees to remove the shade. So it's like, really? Okay.
Okay. So there were 2 things that you mentioned earlier. So one of them, something similar, when we spoke to Lamont Edwards, he said something around about the same, about having a mentor. Do you think that it's necessary for young writers to have a mentor when they're transitioning into, whether they're transitioning from acting or whatever it is that they're doing in the film industry? Is it better to have a mentor along the way?
Yes, absolutely. And you can do it through, I found my mentors through doing these film labs and these writing labs. So Cheo Hodari Coker is one of my mentors. Glenn Mazzara is one of who did the, Cheo did Black Lightning. I hope I'm remembering that right, because I'm always mixing up his shows. Glenn Mazzara did The Walking Dead. I mentioned Craig Mazin already. Joshua Astrakhan, who did It Follows, produced It Follows. And when you're connected with someone like that who gets to know your work and they work with you, they can recommend you. They can write you letters of recommendation. They can suggest you for work. And very often they're honest with you about what you need to work on. They should be. That's what I want. I don't want someone to sugarcoat and just, pat my back. I need to know, what do I need to work on? How do I get to the next level? And that's what a mentor is great for. And whether you're an actor or a writer, I highly recommend it. And now I'm giving back and I'm doing the same.
I was just about to say, how do you pay it forward, Nev?
Yeah. I pay it forward by I'm mentoring 4 screenwriters right now. And I also, I'm a board member of Stowe Story Labs, and we offer fellowships through a group that I started called Nick's Horror Collective. It's NYX, which means Queen of the Night. And it's for women horror filmmakers and writers. And at Stowe Story Labs, I mentor, I do panels, and I get as much back as I give to writers. I learn a lot. It's, I'm for me, next level is to be an executive producer, to run my own show that's my goal. So for me to be able to really work well with writers is important. but it's also the right thing to do. People help me. So, I want to reach out and help, especially Black writers and women writers, because there's so many hurdles for us. And so any kind of network that you can, that I can help be part of, I want to do
that. When you heard about Power initially, and it had Courtney Kemp as the writer and the creator of the show, did that give you like an extra nudge when you were approached to come to the Power universe to come in? Like, did that help with your decision making?
Absolutely, it did, because there are so few of us out there. Because even with the Will Packer show, we started interviewing showrunners to co-EP with me, and it was like, I want a Black woman, and it's like, okay, the list is this small, and so it's hard.
Laugh.
No, but it's like, and that's why I want to. And that's why I also uplift other women who are I'm a co-producer level, moving to co-producer, next is supervising producer. You move up, and I elevate and support all of my sisters who are in roles that and they're moving forward, because that only helps me, and it's the way it should be. We don't need people repeating staff writer 3 times before they're promoted to story editor. We need to move up the ladder just like anybody else. But yes, Courtney was, and Courtney's no joke. She is no joke. She's tough. She's had to be tough. And so that was definitely that. And Gary Lennon, also another playwright. So there's something about New York playwrights. We just have this thing. It's just, and
there's certain camaraderie.
Yeah. No, all right. I have to tell you, Keemie, though, I was surprised. I was shocked. I said, I write sci-fi and horror. Why does Gary Lennon? And he had read the Urban World Film Festival script, Northern Cross, which is very, it's not just violent, but it's action. It's an action thriller, but it also delves into the characters of these 2 women. And I think he responded to that, and I sparked to him. I'd heard about him, and he is just gold. There are very few showrunners who are as supportive of writers, and writers who don't necessarily fit in the box, writers that don't necessarily have all that much experience, but he sees what they can bring, and I really appreciate that about Gary. And he's so honest about his story and himself. Did
he seek you out specifically?
Say again?
Did he seek you out? Did he say, okay, I want Melody Cooper, even though she writes horror and sci-fi?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think he read that script and decided that and then a lot of it comes to, people don't realize that meeting is everything. It is not just, it's like, first of all, they want to say, do you have 2 heads? And are you somebody that, because you spend a lot of time from, 10 to 4 every day. You're building out a whole season, and, do you have enough, is there enough about you that's vulnerable? Because you have to be vulnerable to be open to telling your story, your pain, to bring it to the characters and to the story. And then, and do you get along with this person? Can you see them? Do you spark to them? And I think I had a lot of super energy in the interview because I was really nervous. But yeah, I think that he decided that, gratefully, I'm very grateful that he decided to bring me on board. And it was a great group.
Gary Lennon. Woohoo. Alrighty. So one of the other things that you mentioned before was incorporating social issues into your writing. And I hope that people were able to realize what was happening all throughout the season. Like they did it a little subtle, right? But I feel like it was very glaring in this episode. For instance, with the whole Leon and Diamond storyline, right? If you guys didn't realize what was happening, we were talking, well, we did mention it in an earlier episode. I believe Carl Seaton directed that episode where there was an innocent little girl shot during the drive-by, and they are specifically, like, I spoke to Carl Seaton, and hopefully he doesn't get upset that I mentioned this, but one of the scenes, he specifically had people's reflection showing in the blood, so that they are able to see themselves reflected in what was going on. And he said that that specifically happened to him. Like, he saw that happen. And I was like, what?
Yes.
But something you said earlier was that I try to do it so that it's not so glaring, and like it's kind of like a Trojan horse where you see it and you have to, and people are able to look at it and say, okay, well, I think that's what's happening here, but it's not the way how most people get offended because they don't want it to be too activisty. So that you lose your audience. Was that done purposely? Is, I guess, my question here.
What you mean? Just the Leon storyline?
Just the Leon storyline, because we know, I mean, whoever is listening to this, by this point, you should have seen what happened. So spoilers ahead. Unfortunately, our little Leon is killed.
Yes.
He is killed by bullies. He tries to stand up for himself. He does have boxing lessons with his mentor, Diamond. And as a result, now Diamond is now going into another part of his psyche that he was trying to suppress all along. But we do see another innocent Black boy being killed for something that he was just trying to stand up for, and which was his own self. And was that done purposely? Did you want to make sure we spoke about this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we, in the room, there were, I'm going to say, especially Nikki and I, we were just very, and I'm a mom. So for me, it was important to address anti-gang violence somehow. And I'm going to be completely honest and say that I advocated for not killing Leon really hard. I wanted him to live, because after creating him, I wanted him to live. And then we came to an understanding that in our world and in our story, it was realistic that what happens to him happens. And that's part of the point of the story, is for the audience to actually like Leon. It isn't a random thing. It's a person we care about and someone who we want to see get out and survive. And to see that for a lot of kids, even in his situation, this happens. It's to tell the fullness of that story from that perspective. And then also it serves the drama for Diamond, of what happens to him internally as a result of that. Like you said, there's these glimmers of hope that when he gets told your speech was really good, and you see his kind of pride, you see on his face, like, all right, and you just kind of feel like he's like feeling like maybe there is with this woman and this child, could I have a family? Could I have a life that's beyond being a dealer, beyond this,
beyond being a part of CVI?
Yeah, and then we see what happens. So it was important for Diamond's arc and to get him to where we're going to see him go. And it was important for the authenticity I think for what happens often in the community. But I wasn't happy to see him go. No.
So who overruled you? Why did they say he must go? Couldn't we have gone about this another way to get Diamond being Diamond and Aster Sampson anymore? Like,
yeah. I think basically the showrunner is has the final say, but the room does too. I mean, we roll it around, we discuss like what are the permutations if we do or we don't, and then sometimes you have to make hard choices with characters, and especially with a show like this, it has its has its ecosystem, it has its trajectory, and you have to honor the show, right? So for where we needed Diamond to go, it really felt like this was what we needed to do. Yeah.
Okay. So we are correct in assuming that Diamond is on a different path right now. The Diamond that we used to know, who was more subdued, who was a little bit more even-keeled than Tommy, whereas he kind of rein Tommy in sometimes, where Tommy wanted to go
Uh-huh.
kill everybody, or Tommy wanted
Roger.
to go blow something up, and he says, "Hey, we have to be a little bit more diplomatic." Is it safe to assume that that diamond is gone now?
I wouldn't say he's gone, but I think we're seeing that it's almost as if another part of him is now activated. And
Reawakened? Okay.
yeah, and if you caught that brilliant moment that Joe gives with that little smile at the
The
very
little
end,
smile.
I was like,
That, that's
I
my
love,
favorite part.
yeah, and it's just like, all right, this is the diamond I've been hearing about. This is like, he understands this, right? So, um, it's just it's interesting for both of them.
I'm curious now. I know that I don't think you are on any of the so let me stop there. Well, you wrote this episode, like you are credited with this episode, but for the remaining episodes, do you still contribute? Like, how does the writer's room work? Do you could still contribute to the other episodes and have
Mhm.
feedback or input on what happens with the characters going forward? For at
Um,
least for season 2.
yes, because we break out the seasons. So the whole room we break out what's going to happen as a kind of general arc with Gary's lead, of course, our showrunner is leading
Yes,
us.
sir.
And then episode by episode, kind of wrangle with what's going to happen. And Gary assigns who's going to be working on that episode. And then that person is going to kind of pitch what the storyline is going to be to the room. And then the room says, ooh, that works, that doesn't. And we shape it together. I mean, it was fun watching episodes to finally see episodes 1 through 7, because I wasn't on set for those, right? And
Okay.
to see like all the little things I said, oh, I wrote, I suggested that. I remember, Lamont said that. And, so you see all those little things that came up in the room on the screen, and it really feels, it's like it takes a village to make a season. And it really was very collaborative. And you see that, you felt it in the room, and then you see it play out on screen. It's great.
Is it exhilarating to see your thoughts and your imaginative figures come to life and see them all being put onto a screen?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's everything, because that's why when you have a project that stalls, that's why it's so frustrating. Even if you get paid, when it doesn't go forward, which a lot of people don't realize how many movies and shows don't go forward, and you spend all that time and energy, you want to see it come to life. And so when you get to see it, I remember my first episode I ever saw, it was just like I was in tears, because it's what, and especially the first one I ever wrote, they pretty much put it up as I wrote it, which usually there's a lot of little changes along the way. But it's great to see. It's great.
Is that humbling to deal with when there are edits to your work?
Yes. And it's part of TV. You have to get used to it. Because I remember on the Law and Order SVU episode, I had written this really tight episode that was a ticking clock. And then it's like, well, we have to add this procedural. And then we have to see when, this character does this. And then it becomes something different. The core of what you wrote is still there. But until you're a showrunner, you don't have control of that. And you have to, any writers out there watching this, you just have to be ready for the fact that you serve the showrunner and the show as all the way up until you're a showrunner. That's your job. And you still get to be a part of something wonderful, but there isn't, you don't have a lot of control. But the best control you can have is to, in that room, I pitched, Abuelita, the Latina grandmother. And then to see her come to life with such a wonderful actress, it's just like, yes, So,
yes.
So there are things you get to be a part of.
That is wonderful. So I'm glad that we got to get a lot of background and your thoughts about Diamond. But now I have to ask you about the rest of the stuff that's going on. So this is now when we get to the nitty gritty.
Oh, yeah.
I love your story. I love the inspiration. I love your connection to your brother. I cannot wait to post about this. Now, I'm like through the roof at this point. I'm like, but anyway, so who were some of your favorite characters to write for this episode. So we have Miguel, we have Vic, who I cannot wait to talk to you about. And we have Tommy, we have Diamond, we have Gianna, we have all of these wonderful mesh of people. But who is someone that you'd like to develop in this episode?
That's really hard. That's hard. I think, well, Joe, I always love working for, writing for. That Urban World Film Festival script I told you about, there's a role in it for him. And he was going to read it at the reading, but then he had to do a power shoot, so he wasn't able to do it. So to come full circle to be able to write, Joe, Chris Lofton is always, fun to see how he plays with his role. And for me, Diamond, because we were seeing something different for the first time with him, and trying to push that to find ways to make that happen. It's gonna be hard for me to just. And then Miguel, the actor who plays Miguel, and Miguel and Abuelita, that scene in the quinceanera was I really wanted to have that kind of representation and to have that portrayed, but then to have this undercurrent between Miguel and Abuelita was, they just bring such wonderful, rich darkness to what they're doing. And I don't know if you caught in the scene in the quinceanera when she is leaning in and talking to him, there's this like glow in her pupil, in her eye that was caught that makes her look like
she's talking about Miguel.
When she's talking to Miguel at the table. And I was like, what?
Yeah. That had to be like, I don't know if it was coincidence. I don't know if they did it on purpose. We would have to ask Eve for that. Like, how did you get that to happen? But here's some things that I'd have to ask. So like when I'm watching the episode, I was like, well, I wonder what they were thinking here, right? So for Vic becoming a snitch, I'm grappling with this, right? Because at this point I'm saying, how can this character that we kind of like, right? Like we kind of like Vic because he's not like his dad. He's not like his sister. He loves a Black woman. He's like going to bat for her, even though that same woman was sleeping with Tommy. It's kind of weird. Kind of weird there. But how do we end up where he is now a snitch? Walk me through what the character is thinking. How is this playing out in his head? And as a writer, what is it that we're trying to convey by him turning the tide and being a snitch?
Well, I think very much for Vic, he's always, leading up into before I'm assuming everybody's seen episodes up to this, he kills his father. He's always at the mercy of what other people have told him to do or who he should be. And now he's stepping into his power, but he's also cornered. So it's this, I think it's not so, and the fact that when we like a character and they do things that we question, it's much more interesting. It's much more dramatic. And for Vic, it is a situation where he doesn't go to the feds intending to be a snitch on Tommy, but he gets cornered into that. And it's watch him struggle with that, and to watch him struggle with when he's with Tommy. And there's one brilliant little moment in 208 where he tries to turn Tommy away from suspecting him. And he says, oh yeah, Jannard, you better watch him. And he has this little twitch in his face when he says it, because, and so that's so much.
Just watching that thing before we started.
Yeah.
before we started, I just watched that.
And he does this little thing, and it's so much more interesting dramatically, and it's like real life, that people do things that they don't want to do. They get cornered into it, and you could see he's packing up. He's like, let me just get out of here. I don't want to be doing this. But he can't leave town. So he's kind of spiraling into being in this tight corner, and he doesn't know how to get out. And to see him have to try to work his way out of it, or try to, and he can't, is much more interesting dramatically, I think, than if he was just kind of like, all of a sudden, he shoots his father, and then he's just in power. And I just think it's much more interesting.
what would you say is Vic's end goal here? But I can say what I think it is, but as someone who's writing him, what do you think is his, what does he want to happen after all of this? Because Gloria isn't coming back. His dad is gone. He's assumed leadership within the Flynn organization. His sister is out. What does he want?
It's a great question. I'm not going to answer that question. I would say that that is actually the core of, for the season. What does Vic want? That is what we actually ask that in the room constantly, is answering that question or not, or deciding not to answer that question, that he is in search of what he wants. And when he gets what he thinks he wants, then what?
Yeah,
then
it's
what?
still not
Right. And does he really want to run everything? Does he really want that? Does he even want to stay in Chicago? I mean, all those questions are, open.
Okay, so then my next person that I think we should tackle is one of my favorites. Two. So we'll go with two of my favorites, but we'll start with Miguel. So Miguel, he's in a little precarious situation, isn't he? Right?
Yes.
Miguel thinks that he is outsmarting Tommy. He thinks that he's one move ahead of Tommy, but then he finds out at the quinceañera of all the places to find out that he's actually 2 steps behind, because he finds out, he knows already, because he had already met with the other gang. If I'm saying their name, it's DSDs. It is DSDs. Okay, so he already met with the DSDs, and he finds out there that he's already supplying them through Tommy. Tommy has already approached these people, and he is behind in terms of even going to them and saying that I'm going to be your supplier. So he has no clue about this. So that's mistake number one. So he's already hot with Tommy at this point. And then we get to the quinceañera, and who pops up with a gift in hand? Tommy. At least Tommy didn't come with too long empty hands to a birthday party, right?
What?
But then he sees how Tommy is able to woo other people, and he didn't have the same reception towards Tommy. Do you think that Miguel he's trying to keep his own head? At least that's what I think. But his abuelita already tried to warn him about this from episodes ago. She's like, hey, you gotta watch him. What do you think is going to happen here? Is he trying to be his own man and say, no, I got this. I don't need any more guidance from you?
Yes.
Or is he just oblivious at this point?
I don't think he's oblivious. I think exactly what you said at first. He's trying to be his own man. Abuelita's very influential. She's strategic, right? And Miguel operates from a different place. He doesn't operate from his head, and Abuelita does. But he wants to be able to stand on his own and make the decisions and not have other people making them for him. And he thinks the way in which he's moving forward is working. And when he finds out it isn't, it really pisses him off, and I think it pisses him off not just because he's mad at Tommy. He's just like, he knows right over even in the scene who's standing behind him and silently saying, I told you. I told you so. I told you so. So I think he's mad at himself too, because it's and I think also because he then has to think about everything that's been going on. Everything that he's been thinking is like, now he's, and also second, like, who in my organization can I trust? Can I even trust my own leadership? So I think it gets him riled up in all sorts of ways.
Yes. Are we not reading enough into his relationship with his sister? Is it just him protecting her, or is there something else going on? Because he is super duper protective of her. And at this point, I'm like, okay, you don't want her to be with anybody? You just want her to stay in the house? Who do you want her to be with?
Yeah, I think he's just I think there's a loving relationship there. They lost their dad. I think he stepped in. I think the way in which you know, a lot of men, this is the case, but I think certainly with Miguel, the way in which he shows his love is to control. And it comes across as control to Morea. To him, he's protecting. Like when he rolls up on her boyfriend doctor and decides, you touched my sister, this is what happens to you now. He sees
he just grazed her back.
Literally. It's like, and that was a touch too far. But so I think it's that. It's coming from his. And also, in a situation where we see him under pressure to be in control of something, at least he knows he can take care of his sister. And that kind of, it's misplaced in some ways, I think. The level of anger, obviously, that he has about anybody who might come near his sister. And she doesn't like it. I mean, she says, like, you should not be controlling my life like this. And that also echoes to Tommy, she wants to be as much, everybody wants to be, that's kind of the season. Everybody wants to be their own person. Vic wants to be his own. Tommy is reaching out. Gennard, everybody, Shanti, everybody is moving out to try to be their own person for however they define that. And they're trying to move out of someone else defining that for them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that's my next person, Gennard, played by the wonderful Chris Lofton, right? So here's my beef with Gennard, right? Let me take it back to season 1 when we had a different showrunner, and we're kind of like, I feel like you don't have to agree with this, but me watching it, it kind of seems like we are on a corrective course from whatever happened in season 1. We are correcting all of those ills and wrongs, and we're trying to fix it up in season 2. And if anybody says that that's not happening, I'll be like, y'all kind of lying right now, because that killed a lot of stuff off that was happening in season 1 that is definitely not here anymore. But I'll say it. You don't got to say it. It's fine. You can laugh, but you don't got to say nothing, because they killed Dahlia quick, fast, in a hurry. That I don't even think it made it past episode 1. But whatever the case is, right? That poor black chemist, I felt so bad for her. Jesus. But hold on, let me compose myself. Right? Here's my beef with Gennard. We are told initially that Gennard has been running CBI for 15 years. Diamond has been in prison throughout that time, and he has had a flourishing business. He's not a slouch. He's a fighter. He's not dumb, because if he had this afloat for 15 years and he had pretty much good relations with everyone, whereas they haven't killed each other yet, and it's still running, it's still profitable, and they still have a lot of people that work for them, it means he has some sort of handle on this, right? Like he's not someone that you can just push over. Okay. Then we get the split. We get CBI and treason, and I'm sure there are other factions that split off into other places. And then we get to see them in the last episode where we had the coalition meeting, right? We saw all of that. Then we see the downward spiral of Gennard after being separated from what he knew and what he had grown himself too, right? And nurtured and taken care of. I know we're talking about a drug dealing business, but it's still a business. And he still took care of it. He still grew it. And it was still, again, profitable. Now he's a user. But now he's kind of like in remission from using, or going through withdrawals, we'll say. And he's trying to come out. He's still, after 15 years, trying to come out of the shadow of his brother and trying to reemerge as who? So he's kind of parallel in Vic in that way, right? What do you want, Gennard? What does Gennard want from all of this? I thought that the demotion of him to corner boy was very drastic. I was like, there was no other position. There couldn't have been a 3-headed monster with him, Tommy, and his brother. He had to be a corner boy. Like, why do we have to humble him so much? Why does Tommy put hands on him? This guy is he's not like a little kid. It's not like he's small in stature. Why didn't he swing on Tommy when Tommy tried to choke him? So please walk me through what is happening with Gennard. I feel like I explained it the best way I know how, but maybe I'm not looking at it right.
No, I think you're looking at it right in a lot of respects. I think a big part of it is also that that dark night of the soul that he needs to go through so that he can come back. And when he comes back strong. And he has this woman who has his back and calls him to task. And that's part of his coming back. And we need him to go someplace dark and weaker so that he can come back from it. Because if it's, again, and this is for the, not just for the drama of it, but for the character arc, we need people to go to places, the characters that are extreme, that they're going to come back from, and that really, and also in life that happens. And the fact that when you think about Gennard, when he took over the business, he maybe wasn't ready for that. That was just, his brother goes to prison, and he's like, well, I got to do this. And he had other dreams, other things he wanted to do. And here he is, and he cobbled through it. He did make it, it began to define him, right? He defined himself probably in a different way before, but now this business defines him. And so anything that pulls away at that, it makes him insecure. It tears away at the fabric of who he's become. And so, enough that even answers your question, but
No, I think it does. But then I have a follow-up question then about that. In this iteration of Gennard, does he know what he wants to be or who he wants to be? Is CBI still something that he is passionate about at this point?
I think as things are changing and shifting, because he's aware of that too. He's aware of the interplay. I think that he does want to be a leader. I think he wants to step into. I think that this is it. It's going to be interesting to see how things line up when you have people who are it's on the chessboard, right? And you're eliminating a lot of the chess pieces, and then you've got king, queen, you've got these major pieces still on the board, and each of them wants to win. And and I think that Gennard does want to win. I think he wants to step into his power, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that upswing of him doing that. And I don't think he just wants to go along with the status quo. I think he wants to change the game.
Okay. Speaking of stepping into power, we have seen an emergence rather, of Shanti and Claudia, in a sense, right? So these two are now freaking frack, and they are trying to they are trying to show their dominance in a male-led industry. But one, by working with each other, and two, by trying to not be solely dependent on the males that are within their industry and that are within their immediate circles. So one, Claudia doesn't have her brother and her dad anymore, but she still is under the thumb of Merkovich, who I don't see lasting very long. But that's just my theory because of what we see, what's been happening since we've transitioned. And then we have Shanti, who has now taken on Gennard's beef with Tommy, whereas she's like, I want to get this guy out of here. Would you think that Claudia and Shanti's frustrations with the men that they are pointing at the men, are they well placed? So the frustrations that they have with the men that they feel that are blocking them, are they looking at the game properly?
I think that Shanti and Claudia are trying to get what they can. They're reaching for the low-hanging fruit, and they're trying to be, you see how they shift. They've been shifting, whether or not they work with the Serbs, what's going on. And I think they're just trying to do a dance around what's available, what they can get. But I think they have different motives and different motivations. And I think that Shanti she's 100% with her man.
Okay.
And so,
But is Jannard still worried about Tommy at this point? Because I feel like she is putting that bug back in his ear,
yes,
or putting that battery in his back.
it's like Macbeth. It's like she's made him, and she's like whispering in his ear. And I think it's very much, again, it's everybody trying to position themselves. But Shanti's I love Shanti because the same way that in the boxing ring you have to kind of stay nimble, you have to stay on your feet, you got to learn when to land the right punch, where and when. That's Shanti in terms of her strategy. But she's always thinking about her and Jannard. She sees them, I think, as working together. And so Claudia is, she's a stepping stone, I think, in some ways in her mind. When it works, and that's fine. But her focus is on her and Jannard. Yeah.
Sorry, you kind of cut out a little bit. I'm
sorry
about that.
You froze for a whole second. I was like, wait, did I do something wrong?
Yeah, so you froze. I didn't get to hear the ending part of your answer about Claudia being. So you started off with Claudia being a stepping stone, and then what did you say after that?
Oh, just that Shanti is focused on Jannard, and her and Jannard.
Oh, okay.
As a power, like a power couple. They're a power couple.
Okay, so then you pretty much confirmed something for me then. So Claudia, although she has her college sweetheart, she is still pretty much isolated, even though she has the protection of Merkovich, even though she has the Viagra triangle coming her way. She still has to split her profits with Merkovich, but she's still alone in all of this. And I think maybe right now she didn't realize the protection that her father gave her, and how some of her landings were helped by him. And I wonder if the characters are ever going to come to that realization, because she was so set on being her own woman and not having men run her world or how she conducts her business. But she's still getting backed into a corner by men. So, okay. So who else did we have to cover? So we go over. I like that you just agree. Okay. So then one of the last people that I do want to talk about, and she's not a main character right now, but I do want to talk about Gianna's reaction to Diamond after finding Leon and finding Diamond there. So this scene was frustrating for me, right? Because I was like, why are you just assuming that it's Diamond? Didn't you know that he had problems with the boys in the neighborhood? Yeah. Why are you blaming and beating up Diamond? Is just grief making her reaction be that way, or is it something else?
It's really, I think he's the one standing there, which is why he holds her. He takes it because she says, you were supposed to protect him. You were supposed to keep him from this. So, she brought her son to him to go for boxing and here she, and remember, she's in a situation where her husband has been antagonizing her and her son. And she was, Diamond was a way out in a lot of different ways for both of them to keep them maybe safe. And so to see him there and her son dead, it's just like to just unleash all of that. He's there, and she's gonna not beat on him. She doesn't think he shot him or anything, like, it's not like she's not naming him, but she's just letting out her rage and her grief.
Okay, so it's just grief that we're seeing at this point.
Yeah.
So then I do have a question about the setup of the scene with Leon and Diamond. I won't tell you what I was thinking. I want you to tell me what's happening. So Diamond stands back. Diamond, why'd you laugh? Come on. We gotta get it.
Which scene? The scene where he ties his tie, or when he's on the street?
No, not that one. That one was sweet.
Yeah.
that one made me know he wasn't gonna make it. I was
Right.
like, after all of this, and then the music, I was like, come on, guys, you're pulling at the heartstrings here. Stop. But the setup after they do the tie and Diamond is dropping him home before he
Yeah.
goes to do it,
Yeah.
I at least wish he would have been able to do his little interview.
Yes.
But we probably would have cried at that point if he would have been able to do it. But he drops him home, and then the two boys approach.
Yes.
As a parent, no kid is getting one up on my kid.
Right.
No one. I don't care if it's one, I don't care if it's two. But Diamond stands back. And he lets him handle it himself. Was that like a writer's room thing where we say, okay, no, Diamond can't go help him.
Right.
Diamond has to watch from afar. He's not going to walk up with him.
Yeah.
Yes?
Well, we made that decision because, one, in Diamond's world, he knows he needs to stand up for himself. And he needs to stay. He can't go in and run in there and take care of it. And even though Diamond has, obviously he has a kind of parental kind of feeling towards him, he's not his father. And the part of him that is Diamond knows he has to stand for himself. Leon has to do this. And I'm here. No, notice he didn't walk away. He's there, and just in case, but he knows that he has to take a stand for himself. And then that's why he's so happy when he sees him knock the kid out.
Yeah. But then, unfortunately, the gun comes. Okay. All right. I'm glad you talked me through that because I was mad. I was like, Diamond, what? Why are you standing back? Diamond, keep going.
Yeah.
But
no, and especially
we
since
saw him do it before.
Yeah, and because he's been in the ring with him. We've seen in several episodes, he's teaching him how to stand for himself and and that's why he takes off his jacket. And Diamond is like, all right, because he has to take off his jacket so he can, really box the way he needs to, and he takes the stance. And yeah.
Okay. All right. So then the last person we'll talk about is Tommy, because I feel like we didn't talk about him. We talk about the other characters. So, and then we'll wrap up. Something that I question with Tommy and how much of a sociopath I thought he was. Is it necessary for Tommy to have love in order to make him a little bit more even keeled in this world, in the power world?
I think our decision, and it's important, we want to see, because we remember we're seeing Tommy compared to in Power, where he was taking orders. He's now giving the orders, and he sees what he wants, and he wants to be king. And so to balance that, there's a part of him that's also vulnerable, and so this real love that he has with Maria, which is a different kind of woman that he's ever been involved with. She's her own woman. She's a nurse. She's also dangerous because she's Miguel's sister. It's he's willing to risk to be with her and to see how their relationship develops. It opens up a whole other side of him. And I love the moment when Holly shows up to haunt him. And I mean, the fact that, and that plays
shout out to Lamont.
That's Lamont. That's Lamont. and we talked about, we all wanted to have the characters haunted in different ways. And we didn't know if the actress would be available. And so it was great that we were able to do that, and that Lamont, wrote such a beautiful scene, because Tommy going on his knees and asking for forgiveness for something, that's like, we don't see Tommy really do that. And that's a key moment. That's a crucial moment that plays right into his relationship with Maria, because it opens up his vulnerability as a man to how he relates to love relationships in his life, and what he needs to get clear so that he can move forward in a more positive relationship for the first time, maybe, where it isn't so fraught with betrayal and all the other things that have haunted him in relationships in the past, death, and of course we see him kind of courting that again, because because we don't know how Miguel will respond if he finds out. Tommy also finds out in one episode that the feds have a photo of him and Maria together. Yes. So he knows what's at risk. And I think that vulnerability coming off of especially that previous episode where he's haunted by what happened to Holly and her being pregnant, that idea of having lost the possibilities that might have meant for him, and then being open to saying, well, here's somebody who maybe, who knows, maybe, because Tommy's always seeking family. He has kind of had family along the way, but that's a major thing for Tommy is wanting family, even if he cobbles it together, even if it's people who aren't like actually parents, even if it's with his mom. Yeah. The whole ice cream thing is for me. I love that, the ice cream thing.
Yeah. So there's two things. So one, do you think that the danger aspect to Maria is what entices him more about her? Or do you think that it's the family aspect that he's looking for? Or is it a combination of both?
I think it's a combination, because Tommy is who he is. He's not going to change the fabric of who he is.
But he kind of is.
He kind of is, but not. See, the thing is that if you follow like the thread of like, he's always like, even in power, he's wanted family. He's devoted, and there's a sense of passion and devotion and wanting family. That's a thread. And the way it's changing is he's changing a little bit of what that exactly means and how that exactly can play out, and the kind of woman that he's involved with, and how he's trying to do it the right way. If you notice, they did knock boots at, obviously, but it took until episode 6, or 6. I think it's 6. He didn't want to, he courts her,
Yeah.
So I think that as he's stepping into a new role in terms of power, in terms of being a king and taking over Chicago, that opens up everything new, a new way of loving, a new way of, and not completely new where he's not who he is. It's not by accident that he goes to the first episode. He's like, oh, he finds out he knows who Maria is very early on, and he still pursues her. So there is that element of risk and danger that is spicy for him, it just is.
So, I'll end it on this note. Tommy mentioned something. So like when you say that these things are enticing him, or it's a thrill for him that she does have a dangerous aspect to her, but he is forthcoming, and we know that Tommy wants family. I feel like he's pushing his mom away in a lot of aspects, and maybe we could talk about that and do a deeper dive on that on another day, right? Because what he's doing to Kate, I don't like, but that's a whole nother topic. And we'll probably spend like an hour just talking about the dynamics between him and Kate and how it related to Holly and the type of women that he chooses, right? But he tells Maria while he's courting her, I don't see that in my future. But he likes that she likes it. And I wonder, like, is there a world where Tommy could ride off in the sunset? And I just don't see that for him. Not from the person that we have grown to know. Not the character arc that has been developing thus far. From power to force. Like, is there a happy ending for Tommy? And I wonder if the character is thinking about what ramifications his presence in her life will have for her, or if it's just his need for family, or his need for comfort, because he does look for comfort too. And maybe family is the comfort piece for him. Like, is he just doing this selfishly by pursuing her?
I think there's always the selfish, like, what he wants. Tommy likes to to get what he wants, hands down. But I think he's also concerned. He's genuinely concerned about her safety, to the point that he tells her, look, if your brother's going to hurt you and be a problem, I'll get rid of him. And it's like,
okay. He's like, what you going to tell me, brother?
Right. I love how she slaps him with her purse. You know, so so I think that it's weird. It's because of the way he's come up and the kind of world he's been in. From our perspective, he might say, that's messed up, or that doesn't make sense, but he's doing the best he can. I think that I don't think he wants to admit it to Maria, but he might actually be like, oh, could you imagine if Maria and I like rode off into the kids and had kids and I was able to really have that? Could you? And I think that's like every character has a secret. And I just leave it at that.
Okay. So thank you so much, Miss Melody Cooper. I can't wait to pick your brain some more. I hope you don't get annoyed with me. Don't block me on Instagram.
No, this has been fun. It's fun talking through it, and thank you for having me.
Do you get weirded out when we ask questions like that, or when people ask you such detailed questions about make believe characters? Because I hope people don't think I'm crazy.
Because that means that we've done our job. We've done a job that it's compelling and that you care about the characters and you wonder about them as full people. That's great. Yeah.
So, but also people, you have to separate them. When you see him out on the street, his name's not Tommy.
Yeah. Well, wonder about that. Like when they go to the clubs, because I have all those club events. I just
oh my God.
Just like
they call them Tommy on the mic. Jamad is in the building.
No, and when people are drinking and whatnot, I'm thinking, are they aware?
Are they aware? This is him. He's a real person. But thank you so much. It has been a pleasure talking to you. Come back anytime.
Thanks.
We can talk about horror, sci-fi, whatever it is that you want. It has been a blessing to speak to you. And thank you for being amused to other people and paying it forward, and also being a mentor to others. So if anyone is looking for you, please give them your IG handle.
It's at Melody Cooper Film.
Woohoo! Thank you so much.
Okay.